All right, so we're going to start talking today about parallel and perpendicular lines and what relationships their slopes have. Okay, because we're going to be asked to write equations of lines parallel to a certain line and lines perpendicular to a certain line. So, two distinct non-vertical lines have the same slope. Okay, that's the first word we should fill in, slope. If and only if they are parallel. Okay, so that's the key thing there. Parallel lines have exactly the same slope. If this line is a slope of -2, any line parallel to it is also going to have a slope of -2. Okay, the slopes are exactly the same if the lines are parallel. If you think about it, parallel lines never touch, right? No. So does it make sense that they have to rise and run in the same numbers so that they don't eventually intersect?
Yeah.
All right, and then two non-vertical lines are perpendicular. Uh-oh, I missed a space, sorry. All vertical lines are parallels. That last one I forgot to fill in there, sorry. I didn't see that point. And then the next one, slopes of perpendicular lines. Two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if and only if their slopes are opposite signs, meaning one positive and one negative, and also reciprocals of each other. And then the next blanket says vertical and horizontal lines are always going to be perpendicular to each other. So before I continue, I want to make sure we understand perpendicular lines have opposite signs and reciprocal slopes. Okay, so what I want to do is, if I gave you the number -2/3, what is the opposite of that going to be? Positive, and then the reciprocal means we just flip it upside down, so it would be a positive 3/2. That's how we find reciprocals. We flip them upside down. What if I did 3? What would the reciprocal of that be? 1/3, and then we would have to make it opposite by changing it negative. So that's what I'm talking about opposites and reciprocals. Change the sign and flip the number upside down. Okay, that's what perpendicular means. Change the sign and flip it upside down. That gives you the perpendicular slope. Is everybody okay with those? All right. Now, we are supposed to determine if these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Okay, so we're going to start with line RS. Does everybody see line RS in your picture? Okay, and we are given two ordered pairs, right? So we can either use the formula, or how else could we do it, which might be a little easier? How did we do it with the picture counting our slopes? We just counted how much we go up or down and how much we go left or right. So let's start. I'm going to do that. I'm going from R to, oh no, that one's not going to be easy. Do you see how it's like, that's a janky one. We're going to have to use the formula here, sorry. Do you see how it's kind of, your points are in between lines there? That would make it hard to count. So let's use our points. Point R is -8 and 3. I'm sorry, -3. And point S is 6 and 7. So the first thing I want you to do is find the slope between those 2 points. Using your slope formula, it's right here. Remember, we label our points x1, y1, x2, y2, and we're going to plug it in. x1, y1, x2, y2. Plug that into your slope formula and figure out what the slope is for that line. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Make sure you simplify the slope as much as you possibly can. All right, so let's do this. We're going to plug it in. What did I label as y2? 7 minus y1 is negative 3 over x2, which I called what? 6 minus x1, which is negative 8. We talked yesterday, when you minus a negative, what does that turn to? Positive. So 7 plus 3 is going to be 10. 6 plus 8 is going to be 14. Does that simplify? Yeah, to what? 5 over 7. You divide both of those by 2. So that is the slope for line RS. Now we're going to have to find the slope for line TU. The two ordered pairs they give me, what's the top ordered pair for T? What does they say that is? Negative 4 and what? Look at your picture. Look at T. What's the ordered pair? Yep. And then what is U? 0, 0. Okay. And we're going to do exactly what we did last time. We're going to label our points x1, y1, x2, y2, and we're going to plug it into our slope formula to find the slope. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was looking for something else. Y2 we said was 0. Y1 is 6. X2 is 0. X1 is negative 4. What can 6 and 4 reduce by? Yep. So again, we are asked to determine if these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. If they are parallel, the slopes have to be exactly the same. Are those two slopes exactly the same? No. No, they are not. So my lines are not parallel. And then in order for them to be perpendicular, they have to be opposite signs and reciprocals of each other. Are they both opposite signs and reciprocals of each other? No. So what would we say for that one? Those lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Neither. Okay. I'm going to erase all my work, so I have room to write neither. Maybe. If I could get my pen to work, it might be nice. So for RS and TU, we said those are neither. Do you guys see a line EF and DG anywhere? All right, we're going to have to skip that one because I don't know what happened to that picture. That must have been cut out somehow. So we'll just skip that one. Okay, so look at the other picture. Line AB and line CD. Are those parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Look back at the top of your notes when we talked about perpendicular lines. We said what two types of lines are always perpendicular? Right under where you said your slopes are opposite reciprocals, and it says what? What kind of lines are perpendicular? There you go. Vertical and horizontal. Do I have a picture of a vertical and a horizontal line there? Yes. So those two lines, without having to do any work, are going to be perpendicular. Do you guys remember what I told you the symbol for perpendicular was? Upside down T. That means perpendicular. So if you would like to use that instead of writing the word, you can. Okay, upside down T means perpendicular. Anybody have any questions so far? All right. Let's look at A on the next examples. We're given two equations, and we're supposed to tell if they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Let's take a look at our two forms. You can either have it in slope-intercept form. Which one of these letters is my slope? M, okay. And then you have point slope. Which one of these letters is my slope? M, okay, so that's where we're looking. If it's in slope-intercept form, so if it's y equals some stuff, you're looking at the number in front of x for your slope. If it is in point slope, you're looking at the number in front of the parentheses with x for your slope. So look at your first equation. Y equals 3x minus 2. What is my slope for that one? 3. And then the other equation, y minus 0 equals negative 1/3 times x minus 2. What's the slope there? Okay. In order for them to be parallel, they have to be exactly the same. Are they exactly the same? No. In order for them to be perpendicular, they have to be opposite signs and reciprocals of each other. Are these opposite and reciprocal?
Yes.
They are. I've got a positive 3 and a negative 1/3. So they are opposites and reciprocal. So these two lines would be perpendicular. I'm just going to use my symbol so I don't have to write it over and over again. Okay, I want you to try the rest of those. Try B, C, D, and E. Determine if they are parallel or perpendicular. You can use your symbols, okay? The two little slanted lines like that, that means parallel, if you don't want to write the words. And then the upside down T means perpendicular. You just write neither. Or you can put not if you want to, it doesn't matter. So go ahead and try B, C, D, and E in that next section. Look at your slopes. If they are exactly the same, they are parallel. If they are opposite and reciprocal, they are perpendicular. And if they don't have any kind of relationship at all, then it would be neither. They are reciprocal, but are they opposite sides? No. So they would be neither. They have to have both opposite sides and reciprocal. Are they exactly the same? Are they opposite sides and reciprocals? They are reciprocals, but they're not opposite sides. So it's the same. We ready? All right, for B, I have y equals 3 and x equals 1. What two types of lines are those? Y equals is, what did we say yesterday? What kind of line is this? Horizontal. Didn't we talk about yesterday the equation for a horizontal line was just y equals wherever it crosses the y-axis? And then x equals, we said, was vertical. And what did we say about vertical and horizontal lines? They are always what? Huh? Perpendicular, yes. All right, for C, what's the slope of the first equation? Y minus 5 equals negative 3/4 times x plus 2. Okay. And then the next equation is y equals negative 3/4 x plus 2. What is that slope? Are they exactly the same? That means these lines are parallel. All right, for D, what is the slope of the first line? 2, and the second line? 1/2. Are they exactly the same?
No.
Are they opposite and reciprocals? No. They are reciprocals, but they are not opposite signs. In order for them to be perpendicular, they have to be both opposite and reciprocal. So what would we say for this one? Neither. And then E, I have two equations that are x equals. X equals negative 2 and x equals 4. If I have, what kind of lines are x equals? Horizontal or vertical? Vertical. If I have two vertical lines, what could you tell me about them? They are parallel. Anybody have any questions?
Yes.
What? Because if you have the equations, if you have the equation x equals -2, that's a vertical. Oops. Try to draw better. That's a vertical line going through -2 on the x-axis. And then if you have x equals 4, that's a vertical line going through 4. And since they're both straight up and down, they're parallel. Make sense? Okay. All right. Go ahead and do the same on the next 3 questions. Look at their slopes. Determine if they are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So on the next A, B, and C. What's the slope for A? For the first equation, I'm sorry. 3. And for the second equation, it is -1/3. What are those? Same, opposite reciprocals, or neither? Opposite reciprocals, which means these lines are perpendicular. What is the slope for the first equation in B? 9/7. What's the slope for the next equation? 9/7. Are they the same, opposite reciprocals, or neither? Same, which makes them parallel. Yep. And then C is very similar to E on the last one. I have x equals -3 and x equals 4. 2 vertical lines would make them parallel. So does everybody understand how to determine if 2 lines are parallel just by looking at the equations? Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to write some equations. So if we make it small enough I can actually read it. If we look at that first example, it says write an equation in point-slope form. So it's telling us what form to use. Okay, right up here, point-slope form. That is parallel to y equals -3/4 x plus 3, and it contains -3 and 6. Okay. So the first thing I have to determine is what slope to use. It says the line is parallel. What do we know about parallel lines and their slopes? They are the same. Okay. So what is the slope in the line that we want it parallel to? What's the equation of the line? Y equals -3/4 x plus 3. What's the slope? -3/4. So I want to use that exact same slope. So that is going to be my M. And then I want to use the point -3, 6. So that is going to be my x1 and my y1. And then we are going to just plug it into our point slope form. We plug in y1, m, and x1. This y and that x stay the same. So it is going to be y minus, what is my y1 value? 6. Equals what slope did I say I wanted to use? -3/4 times x minus, what's my x1? -3. And when you minus a negative, what does that turn? So that's what my equation should look like. I really didn't have to do anything other than decide what slope to use. Everything else is just plugging it into a formula. So far, so good? All right. I want you to try the next example. It is exactly the same as the one we just did. We want to write an equation in point-slope form for the line parallel to y equals 1/2 x plus 5/2, and we want it to contain 7 and 1. So first of all, determine what slope you want to use. Then use your ordered pair to write your equation. What is the slope of the line I want it parallel to? 1/2, okay, so that's my m. And then I'm going to use this as x1, y1. So it is going to be y minus 1 equals 1/2 parentheses x minus 7. Are we good there? Okay. Okay, we got plenty of time. So number 1, in the next example, it says write the equation of the line parallel to the given line and containing the given point. You should be able to do number 1. We'll have to talk about 2, but go ahead and do number 1. Exactly the same way you just did the previous 2 questions. Determine what slope you want to use. And then use that ordered pair as your x1 and y1. What is the slope of the line we want it parallel to? 3, okay. So that's my m, that's what I'm going to use. Oops. And then my ordered pair is my x1 and y1, so it's going to be y minus 2 equals 3 parentheses x minus 1. Does everybody agree with that? Yep. Okay. What's wrong with the equation for number 2? It's not solved, right? I can't just pick out my slope in this equation. It says my equation is x plus 2. I'm going to bring it over here. My equation is x plus 2y equals 6. I can only pick out my slope if it looks like this or this. Now, I can't make that equation look like this very easily, but what I can do is I can solve it for y, okay? So sometimes you'll get an equation where you can't just look at it and determine the slope. You're going to have to solve it for y to put it in slope-intercept form so that you can decide what the slope is. So first of all, if I wanted to get that y by itself, let's look at this. I want to get this by itself. What would I have to get rid of first? What's next to it? The x. And how do I move that x to the other side? Subtract. Okay. This is where we have to be pretty good with our algebra skills. When I do this, when you write your equation, the x term is always written first, right? In your slope-intercept form? So can I combine a negative x and 6? Are those like terms? No. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my negative x and then plus 6. Okay, I want my x term first. There's a lot of people on their phones not paying attention, and you're not going to know what to do on this question. Now, how do I get y by itself? Divide by 2. But how many parts are there in this equation right now? 3. So I have to divide each one of these by 2. Okay, not just one piece, but I've got to divide them all. Now let me ask you a question. What number is in front of this x? A negative what? So that's going to be written as a negative 1/2 x, like that. And then 6 divided by 2 is 3. So now that I have my equation solved for y, can I tell what slope to use? Yep, what is the slope? Negative 1/2. Okay, and then we're going to do that with the point that they gave me. Whoops, sorry. So we said our slope was negative 1/2, and we're just going to plug it in. Y minus 3 equals my slope times x minus 4. So with that equation, we had to do just a little bit of work before we could decide how to write our equation. Now we've got to switch it up a little bit. What does the next one want? It wants the equation of the line what? Perpendicular. So let me ask you this. Starting with the first, number 3, what's the slope of that line? 3/4. In order for it to be perpendicular, for a perpendicular slope, I'm going to have to change the sign and flip that upside down. So if my slope is 3/4, what would the perpendicular slope be? There you go, negative 4/3. And then I still just use that point as x1, y1. And we plug it in. Is everybody good with where I got that perpendicular slope from? Change the sign, flip it upside down. So it is going to be y minus 2 equals negative 4/3 times x minus, not 13, minus 3. Now, what I want you to do with number 4, is your equation ready to pick out your slope? No. So do that one just like we did number 2. Solve that first equation for y. 4x minus y equals 9. I want you to go to the side and solve it for y. Off to the side, we should be working on solving that equation. 4x minus y, you want to get that y all by itself so that you can figure out what that slope is, and then you can pick out a perpendicular slope. What's the first thing I want to do if I want y by itself? Subtract the 4x over to the other side. That leaves me with a negative y equals negative 4x plus 9. Now what do I need to do? Divide everything by negative 1, yep. So y is going to equal negative 4 divided by negative 1 is a positive 4. Positive 9 divided by negative 1 is negative 9. What's the slope of the line now? 4. And if I want a perpendicular slope, I have to change the sign and flip it upside down. So it would become negative 1/4. Then we're going to go x1, y1. And we can plug it in. Y minus a negative 6 turns to plus equals negative 1/4 times x minus 8.